In the name of God, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Y'all have a seat. I had a cheeseburger this past week with home-style hash brown potatoes. You know, the big chunky ones. To put it just a little bit differently, I have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God, and there is no health in me, to quote the old prayer book. But my Lord, it was good. It was all Edward's fault. Some of you will remember Edward. He is our friend who lives over at the Riverview Nursing Center out close to the foot of the Jimmy Davis Bridge. I go and see him on a pretty regular basis, but he doesn't drive. And so from time to time, he calls me looking for a ride. Well, this past Wednesday morning, Edward called and suggested that we go to the 12:15 communion service at Holy Cross together and then have lunch. As it so happened, my schedule was pretty free that day, so I said, sure. I picked him up, and we went down to Holy Cross, which happens to be where my mother was raised. It also was where my mother and father were married in 1949, and so as you might expect, there's always been a special place in my heart for that beautiful old church. Well, the service was fine. It was simple. The priest is, as you might imagine, a good friend and colleague, and I dare say was somewhat startled to see us, right? It's the same sort of service that we have here on Wednesday evenings at 6, by which I mean it's the sort of service where you're never quite certain if anybody's going to come at all. And so you're always glad when somebody comes unexpected. And as we were leaving, I asked Edward where he wanted to eat. He did not hesitate or equivocate. He was specific and emphatic. And he said, George's. George's. And in that moment, y'all, I found myself in something of a moral dilemma. An ethical quandary. Y'all know about George's Grill? I know you do, actually. Over there across from Centenary College in Shreveport, right? It's part of what used to be known as the Great Triumvirate, right? Strong's, Merle's, George's, all in a row. Cholesterol row. There's not a thing on that menu that I'm supposed to eat. But from the moment he said George's, I began to salivate. I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding. I've been eating nuts and berries for a year, y'all, you know? But I'm thinking, I'm doing the Lord's work. Surely he won't count these calories against me. But I started feeling guilty anyway. And so along the way, as we were going over there, and Edward doesn't say much. And so I was able to have a conversation in my head when we were driving over there. And I told myself I was going to order the chef salad at George's. Right. Because by the time we got there, I just couldn't do it. I just couldn't pull the trigger on that chef salad. They brought the cheeseburger. I thought I died and gone to heaven. I just looked at it for a few minutes like it couldn't possibly be real, you know. Eureka! And it was so good. Oh my Lord, it was the best thing I ever put in my mouth. I got to the end of it, y'all, and I started taking really little bitty bites, you know, to make it last longer. Edward got really tickled, clearly entertained by my PDA, public display of affection over that cheeseburger. And we really had a good time. And when I was driving him home, it occurred to me that if I had a cheeseburger every week, it wouldn't have been the same, right? But that a cheeseburger every once in a while is not only a gift from God, but it is also quite capable of producing something very much akin to joy. I'm only half kidding there. It really does. That's the first thing I learned. But here's the second thing. I've been ministering to Edward for a number of years now. Some of you know him, and been with him scores of times over the years. But last Wednesday was the first time we'd ever actually sat down and eaten together, just he and I. And it was, without question, the most fun we'd ever had. There's just something about breaking bread together, isn't there, that makes all the difference. You know, our attitude toward food, just generally in this culture, is pretty messed up. In my experience, most of us either eat too much food, or as an overreaction to that, we eat too little food. I've done both in the last week, right? But hardly any of us eat in genuine moderation on a regular basis. It's just kind of the way our culture is. And it's really a shame, because the Bible is absolutely filled, chock-filled, if you will, with stories about people eating together all the way through. You know, it's no secret why the Brown Bag Bible Study has been so successful on Thursdays at noon. And it's not primarily because of me, but rather I am convinced it is because we eat together. Year after year, week after week, we've joined one another and eaten together on Thursday at noon. And over the years, we've become friends. It really is true. Moreover, we have recently been studying in that study the book of Genesis. And what we have learned is that people ate together at the drop of a hat in the Bible. Seems like every week they're eating as a group, right? They ate together when they made a treaty or an agreement of some kind. They ate together when company came. They ate together for weddings and family gatherings and community events. But it's not just Genesis. The fact of the matter is that people eating together is a major theme in the entire Bible, a much overlooked major theme. Jesus' first miracle in John's Gospel was at a wedding feast wherein Jesus provided part of the feast itself by turning water into wine. And not only that, Jesus told parables about feasts and banquets all the time. And indeed, heaven itself is both in the Gospels and in the book of Revelation depicted as a banquet. A banquet. And then there's the fact that arguably the most important sacrament in the entire church, and the only one ordained by Jesus himself, has us eating together every single Sunday as we meet at God's table to consume the body and blood of Christ. So the question is, what's with all the eating? Right? Of course, at its most basic level, eating is one of the primary things we do to survive. We have to eat to live. But I think it's much more than that. Because you see, as I look back over my life, the best of times in my life, the warmest of times in my life, the most nurturing of times in my life, almost always have involved eating. Have almost always have involved a family meal. Think of it. Christmas, Thanksgiving, Easter. On Easter, my mama used to host the whole family for brunch after church. And she always served cheese grits. And I remember looking forward to them all year long, right? But family gatherings are like that. But also weddings and funerals. Funerals, absolutely. Or just normal times. It is the family dinner table more than any other thing that reminds us of home. Of being home, of being safe and protected and loved. It is no wonder that in the Bible it's the primary metaphor for heaven. For that is ultimately our home. I mentioned the Brown Bag Bible Study a moment ago. One of the other major themes we find in Genesis and really in the whole Old Testament is the theme of strangers in a strange land. Really from the very beginning of the Bible, Adam and Eve, when they were no longer able to be in the Garden of Eden, became strangers, didn't they, in a strange land. And Cain, after he killed his brother, became a stranger in a strange land. Abraham, after he left Mesopotamia and came to Canaan, was also a stranger. And Jacob, after he was running away from his brother Esau, became a stranger as well. And then the children of Israel in the 40 years in the wilderness, all of them strangers, you see, and all of them looking for and longing for home. Here's the point. The same is true for us. The same is true for us. All of us, for all of our lives, long for can scarce describe, but which feels very much like home. A place of safety. A place where I can be myself. A place of love and nurture. A place when I'm there, I have finally, at long last, arrived. You see, of course, in real life, our homes are not perfect or idyllic, are they? Our memories likely embellish them somewhat. We don't remember the fights at the table all that much, do we? But you see, they were just reflections of our true home. Some were better reflections, some worse reflections, depending upon the home, but reflections nonetheless. And whether we know it or not, it is that true home, that heavenly home, that we long for. It is that home that is our heart's desire, and indeed where our hearts belong. Jerusalem, my happy home, when shall I come to thee? When shall my sorrows have an end? Thy joys, when shall I see? Y'all, heaven's not about floating around forever. No, it's not. It's about a banquet, a feast. And we're all there, all of us. And the food is amazing. Even the cheeseburgers. And the conversation is heartwarming and stimulating and life-affirming. And we're finally home for good. We have finally, at long last, arrived.